Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts, sports journalist David Todd, and from SteelersDepot.com, Dave Bryan. Just a couple of Daves, chillin', talking Steelers. Now, here's Dave and Dave.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave. He's Dave Bryan of SteelersDepot.com, the place to get your latest and greatest Steelers information. And I'm David Todd. It's Season 9, Episode 37, and we're wrapping up the bye week. Dave, guys getting out of town, getting a little time off. Steelers trying to get healthy, but maybe I was a little bit premature when I said all 53 guys would be round and ready to go when they got back at it next week. I think that was kind of the little bit of news that we've gotten since we spoke on Wednesday.
Yeah, I might have improperly speculated about another man's groin as well. It's not looking like, at least to what he said this past week in practice, that Morgan Burnett's going to be back after the bye week. And who knows, from that point forward there. I kind of thought that, the amount of time that he's missed since week 2 up until, you have the bye week now, and then the backside of that when you come back, I thought, well, for sure he'll be back, for the game against the
Basically,
Browns.
a clean month to get healthy, which for most muscle pulls, a month will do it. A month will get you back.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like that's going to happen, and assuming it doesn't, and then let's go ahead and assume that he misses the game against the Ravens as well. I mean, what happens when he is healthy? I mean, you've already got, look, we knew that at some point during his rookie season, Terrell Edmunds was going to hit the field and start playing a more considerable amount of snaps. Well, Burnett's injury hastened that along, if you will. So, and Edmunds really, quite honestly, has played. There's been some encouraging things out of him the last 2 games against Atlanta and against Cincinnati. Obviously, now he obviously had a few struggles there in the first 4 games there. That's kind of to be expected. But let's assume that Morgan Burnett misses the next 2 games, but he's healthy and ready to go after that, and also assuming, which is dangerous to do, that everybody else in that secondary stays healthy. What do you do with Morgan Burnett at that point? Does he just become just your dime package guy only? I mean, are you talking about 10 to 12 snaps maybe a game for him, or is all this kind of predicated on Terrell Edmunds and how he's playing, or do you even let Terrell Edmunds just go ahead and play through whatever, however he plays?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I mean, you're going to be, if he misses another 2 games, you're going to be at the halfway mark of the season. You're going to be 9 weeks in. And yeah, I don't know. At that point, with the experience that Edmunds and Cam Sutton will have gotten, is Burnett going to be clearly the better option? I mean, you play whoever the best player is. So that's I don't think it's going to be a big conundrum for these guys. They're going to know, the coaching staff's going to know who the best player is. But it will be interesting to see if Burnett, having not been on the field at all, is going to be the guy who gets inserted right back in there.
Was James Harrison the best player over Bud Dupree last year?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, again, you trust the judgment of the coaches, but it certainly seemed when Harrison got his opportunity in New England that maybe the Steelers made a serious mistake.
Well, I mean, and against Kansas City, he didn't. I guess my point being, I just threw that back at you because you said to put the best player out there. Not maybe that's not normally the case, and especially when it comes to rookies and first round draft picks, and that's kind of why I prefaced. My question to you there is because we're dealing with a guy in Terrell Edmunds who is a first-round draft pick, and because he has played, better the last 2 games here. Personally, I don't think you're going to pull Sean Davis off the field either. So I think you could be looking at an extremely reduced role for Morgan Burnett when he comes back. Maybe 10 to 12 snaps, a game at that point, and then you have to wonder, Morgan Burnett going to be one and done?
We've talked about this before, and the odds are yes. I would think the odds are pretty high. Now, he can certainly come back and have an excellent second half of the season, and that maybe my view will change. But right now, it's hard to see. It's hard to see the value in it. But again, we haven't seen enough. We didn't see enough in the preseason, let alone in the regular season. So he's a look. Is he going to transform the defense? Probably not. But they signed him for a reason, and he's a bit of an unknown and a wild card here going into as the Steelers are going to approach the second half.
It sure would be a nice option to have an experienced guy like him be able to play in the box in some sub-package situations towards the end of the from the second half of the season on. So definitely a name to watch. Now, I don't think we've heard anything about Darius Hayward-Bay and that ankle of his. At this point, doesn't outside of, you'd like to have him back for special teams. Offensively, 6 of one, half a dozen the other when you're talking about probably him and Justin Hunter. Now, I think Darius Hayward-Bay, should the need arise, could give you better quality snaps in the slot there than say a Justin Hunter. But outside of special teams, it's not anything I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time on analyzing if he's healthy or if he isn't healthy. After the bye week here, one would think that he would be. Now, what do you do with a guy? Let's assume that L.J. Fort, the other guy who missed time with injury, let's assume that ankle injury is good to go after the bye week with him. And you flash back to a couple of things that Keith Butler said and Mike Tomlin said. After really the kind of the 2-game stretch there, against Baltimore and against Atlanta there, where Fort put some quality snaps on tape. What do you do with L.J. Fort after the bye week?
I don't, look, we talked about Vince's game most recently and against the Bengals. And, Vince, I thought, played pretty well. He got beat on a couple plays, but I thought Vince was a very active defender in that game and came off pretty well. Like I said, he wasn't perfect. But we talked about the play where he got split out on Mixon. They got the matchup they wanted, and he ran well with him down the sideline into that, breaking up that pass play. Made some good tackles on third down. Had some good run stops. So the reality is, people know I bang the drum for L.J. Ford all the time, and I love the guy. But the reality is, I don't expect to see him, anything more than special teams as we saw in the past.
Well, I think Alex did a good job of breaking down of where the Steelers have struggled when opposing offenses have gone empty this year, against them. And really, I think kind of going back into last year as well, too. Teams, that it's noticeable. It sticks out. That's why teams keep doing it against them. So we haven't seen the end of it. At some point, I think they're going to have to make a decision. I mean, how much longer? I guess my question is how often are other teams going to try to exploit? Your probably arguably who's your weakest player on defense?
Who's your weakest player on defense? Well, Artie Burns first, maybe Sean Davis second.
Where does Vince fit in on that?
Well, look, Vince. Like I said, look, you'd like Vince to be your 9th best starter on defense for sure, or 11th best starter on defense because look, I'm not here to defend Vince Williams, but I don't think he's a horrible football player. I mean, I have not been in the Vince Williams camp. We talked about the extension that kind of came out of the blue, but I'm not benching Vince Williams.
I'm not benching him either, but I think you've got to be a little bit more careful in certain situations in scheme, I think, and look, we talked,
that's what they've been trying to do all year. I mean, look, they came into the season with a different approach to, scheming things up and getting these guys off the field in those situations. So it has been on the agenda. Now, whether they've executed it properly or not is a bit of a different story, but it is the agenda is to have 6 DBs out there in obvious passing situations.
We obviously have only seen Matthew Thomas for like 4 snaps, and that was at the end of the Falcons game. It's clear that he's still probably behind the 8 ball some here, so I doubt we're going to see. Maybe we see a little bit of them towards the bottom, end of the third of the year. But right now, it just there's no reason to think that, barring injury, that we're going to see a lot of Matthew Thomas this year. One would think that L.J. Fort would get the next most amount of snaps should the need arise there at inside linebacker there. So okay, we covered the three kind of the 3 injured guys. I mean, outside of Burnett, as you kind of stated, this should be a healthy team coming out of the bye for 2 games against division rivals in the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, look, the Steelers. If the Steelers can go out and win these 2 games and come out 5-2-1. I mean, it's not exactly smelling like a rose, but they're in damn good shape versus obviously versus where they were 2 weeks ago. So 2 big games. Now going into Baltimore and winning is going to be tough, but they just did it in Cincinnati. And look, I realize that there's a little bit of a bad taste about how the defense played in that game because of when they gave up the scores. But, giving up 2 scores at the end of each half, obviously the second one being the end of the game to put them behind, you want them to make plays at the biggest moments, and they didn't do that. But the defense played pretty well in that game. I mean, they came off an Atlanta game where they played reasonably well, and then they played pretty well in the Cincinnati game. You look around, again, it's not 1976. It is 2018. And as we talked about on Monday or Wednesday, if you hold teams to 21 points-ish, you should, with this offense, you should win games. And doing it on the road was impressive. Now, they should put it – look, I think the Browns we've been talking about the Browns and some of the attributes that they have. And certainly they're a more exciting and interesting team for the fan base with Baker Mayfield. And they're going to try to win their first road game in 24 weeks. The Browns come into Pittsburgh. The Steelers need to, have another game where they dominate somebody. They're going to have to deal with Myles Garrett. They're going to have some things to deal with Baker Mayfield that they didn't have to deal with Tyrod Taylor. But, need to see a good 60-minute effort across the board. They're getting closer to it. We saw it certainly the second half against the Falcons, and the offense left points on the board for sure, but it was a pretty good effort against the Bengals. Now see if they can coming out of the bye, if they can put 60 minutes good game together against the Browns, and then it's all the chips are on the table when you go on the road to Baltimore.
I wanted to kind of talk statistically about how this defense has performed through the first 6 weeks, and it was about this time is when I like to start breaking out the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat, because I feel it's just such a great measure, a great tool, and somewhat a great predictor. Maybe not so much after 6 weeks, but I mean, if you look at go back in. I mean, you would call the last 10 years with the way that the NFL has moved into more of a passing league as a good baseline. Obviously, you'd like more than just 10 years of data to go on, but probably a good baseline. You would agree with that, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, the Steelers and this is where we're probably going to need some math help from some of our math major listeners here. One aspect of this. Now, when you look at the Steelers' offensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat, it's never really one that I spend a lot of time on, because it's usually right where it needs to be, and this year is no different. It's 7.20, which is really quite fantastic for the Steelers at this time of year. In fact, you have to go back to 2015 to find the last time that the Steelers have had an offensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat number of higher than 7.20 after their first 6 games. And before that, you have to go back to 2009. As a whole, there's nothing really as far as this passing game goes offensively to be concerned about. Now, defensively, you don't need this stat to know that the passing defense hasn't been great for the Steelers this year. But with that said, the actual number is 6.74. And when you look league-wide, I believe that is, excuse me, losing my voice here. Technically, it's 22nd best in the league, and that probably matches about what people have seen on film so far. Now, within that, though, you have played, obviously, 6 games, and I could get into some gloom and doom about what that 6.74 number means as far as the Steelers possibly winning the Super Bowl this year, but I won't, because it is a lot of doom and gloom there, especially over the course of the last 10 years. We've seen teams with a number that high defensively make it to the Super Bowl. We just haven't seen a team. In fact, I think it's 6 teams, I think. 6 teams have had a defensive number that high or higher than the Steelers currently have after 6 games that have gone on to make the Super Bowl. All 6 of them have lost. So enough of that doom and gloom. I wanted to focus in on why the Steelers number is so high right now. And if you go back and look individually at each game that they played this year, the funny thing is, or not funny actually, not funny, haha, Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, take a guess of what their offensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt number was against the Steelers in that game.
13.
15.4. I mean, off the charts, right? I mean, just incredible performance the Chiefs put on the Steelers in that game. And in the other game that the Steelers lost against the Ravens, it was like 8 point something, okay? Now, let's go ahead and stomach and eat the game against the Ravens. How much weight should we, not only as stats when it comes to the stat, but as us as fans, how much weight should we put into that one defensive passing game performance against the Chiefs? At 6 games in.
We know now how good the Chiefs are. So, it counts the same amount everything else does.
Should it be weighted at all? Because it's such off the.
No, not more or less. No, it's look. The game wasn't garbage time offense for the Chiefs. It was, Steelers lost that game by whatever the final score was, but within a score, right? And Chiefs did what they did. When they scored the first 3 possessions first half, the first 3 possessions second half, it just counts like anything else counts.
Right. Well, I mean, it definitely. You would agree that it skews the numbers, right?
It doesn't skew the numbers. It's a game. Well, yeah, of course it skews the numbers because the Chiefs were great, but that doesn't mean you weight it more or less. It's just it was a game where they played a really good team, and that's what they did to them.
I guess I'm looking at it more from a stats perspective.
Well, I'm looking at it from a stats perspective as well. It counts as 1/6 of the total.
Sure. I'm just wondering how much it should be, weighted versus when measuring against other teams. Against in the league, and using it as a predictive tool, I think the math people out there are kind of understanding the angle that I'm going at here.
Oh, I'm a math person. I'm not understanding. Then should you rate the Tyrod Taylor game differently?
Probably not. I mean, no, because it's not out of. I mean, it was low. It was obviously a low performance passing wise for them, but it wasn't out of. I mean, look, you want to see low that game Josh Rosen had last night. That's out of the kind of the norm range, if you will, of what you get as far as an adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat number for a single game. Even though Tyrod's was like 3 point something or another, I mean, we've seen bad. I mean, it's not like it's unheard of to have a game like that from a team with a bad quarterback.
What were the numbers in the Chiefs Patriots game? Do you have any idea?
No, I don't have. I don't have that in front of me individually of what.
I don't know why you would take a particular game that was a close game score wise and adjust its percentage. I mean, if the Chiefs had beat the Steelers 52-0 and gotten three bombs in the last 3 minutes that were garbage time, I would say sure you might make an adjustment, but that was a game where everything mattered till it didn't, till the final whistle. So
I guess what I'm getting at here is how much should we read into this stat 6 weeks into the season?
I think it becomes a realistic stat at this point. There's now enough weight in NFL statistics, and I think this is the right time. I think you're right about that. 5 or 6 weeks into the season, even if you have an outlier performance somewhere, there is enough other data that you have enough information to start making assumptions. You don't want to do it when people talk about on pace for. That's just nonsense. When you do it 2 weeks into the season or 3 weeks into the season, you get 6-8 weeks into the season. Well, you're halfway into the season. It's legitimate. When things are ridiculous, on pace for is always a bit of an absurd kind of data point to use when we're talking about records being set, because it is unlikely that an NFL quarterback who throws like Ben's on pace for, it's unlikely throwing for 350 yards through the first 8 games that you're actually going to do that for 16 games. So the record-setting stats on pace for generally don't make a lot of sense to me. But the overall team type of stats, I think at this point, six weeks in, for all the teams in the league, or just about all the teams in the league, it starts to be pretty granular.
Okay, here's some, if I can find it real quick here. 9. Okay, and when it comes to that adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat, I always like to play with the differentials too. Obviously, you want your offense to be better than your defensive number, and of course, the higher the differential is between the two, normally the better the team. Here is a stat for you that I pulled out of my data over the course of the last 10 years. This is data through teams having played 6 games, okay, to start of the season. 9 of the last 10 Super Bowl champions have had a adjusted net yards per passing attempt differential after 6 games played of 1.26 or better. Here are the teams that have that to date this year, with only the Bears yet to have played 6 games. The Chargers, 2.61. They're leading the league in differential right now, 2.61. The Rams, 2.56. Kansas City, 2.39. Seattle, how's that for a surprise?
That definitely surprises. Is it because of the offense or the defense?
Both. But they have a 4.65 defensive number.
Yeah, that's good.
2.21. Baltimore, 2.01, and Chicago brings up the rear of those top of those teams with a differential of 1.26 or better. And of course, they haven't played their 6th game yet, 1.67. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Of those 6 teams, is our Super Bowl champion for 2018 coming out of that group?
If you put the Patriots in there, I would say probably yes. I think that's about a 50. I think that's about a 40 to 50% likelihood there. I mean, you've got just give me the list again from the top: Chargers, Rams, Chiefs.
Chargers, Rams, Chiefs, Seahawks, Baltimore, Chicago. None of us believe Chicago's going to win this thing, right?
No, Baltimore's not going to win a Super Bowl either, and Chicago and Baltimore and Seattle aren't going to win a Super Bowl. So one of the other 3 could. I'd say you got about I'd say 40% chance, 40% likelihood that you get the Super Bowl winner there.
40% chance. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting, and I'm going to leave this alone because I think some of the early numbers that I'm looking at, and I'm going to try to go back 20 years worth of data on this, even though I think that's a little bit over the top. What selection of data would you for what matches the NFL now?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I actually think 5 years is probably the game is different. I think in the last 5 years, the game is different. So I think that you can go back further, and it's probably still useful information, but I do think the game is different in the last 5 years.
So 10 definitely would have it covered? Or is 10, or is 10 too much?
Yeah, I think it might be too much. I think the game being different might not be. I think just 5 years will give you the 5 years. And look, we're in more of the video game territory now than we've ever been. So I think if you go back 10, you kind of get away from that.
Well, I mean, 10 years ago was
who won in 2000?
Steelers and Cardinals, right?
Steelers winning the Super Bowl. Yeah, there you go. So I would say it's less than that.
I mean, but you didn't, and then 2 years after that was Steelers
in the Packers.
Packers, right? I mean, kind of getting into more. I personally, I think 10 years is perfect, but regardless, I think, I don't know, maybe I'll run the numbers at 5 and 10 to see what would come up here with the predict. I just don't think 5 is probably good enough to use as a predictive tool, but I don't know, maybe it is with the way way it is a passing league nowadays. But for Steeler fans, look, it's obviously stats are stats, and that's why I tried to make sure before I got in here and spoke all doom and gloom about their defensive number this year, how much it's being affected, or how much it has been affected by that one game against the Chiefs, and I guess that's sort of a shout out to our math people here. How much should I be weighting that or what? But anyway, regardless, after each of these teams, or after week 8. I'm going to take another look at these numbers, and then I think you're going to be able to really pull some good data out of this as far as a predictive tool goes. It goes without saying, it all boils down to this, and I think you'll agree with this. The Steelers defense has to start playing better, the pass defense, and you don't need stats to tell you that.
I'm not sure there's an NFL team that you wouldn't say that about right now. I mean, there are probably a couple, but yeah, it's a good day to be a quarterback and a wide receiver. That's just the way it is in today's NFL.
And I'm not sure how much do you think we're going to learn about this pass defense in the next 2 games?
I think they're going to shut the Ravens down. I mean, look, I don't know. The Browns receivers are nothing to scare you these days, once you get past Jarvis Landry, as we talked about the other day. But
true or false? If the Steelers do not beat the Ravens, they will not go to the Super Bowl this year.
Well, when the Steelers beat the Ravens, I would say they won't go to the Super Bowl. It's easy to pick against going to the Super Bowl, so I would say true. They're not going to the Super Bowl. Win or lose, I would pick they're not going to the Super Bowl at this point in time.
Sure, because that's easy to do based on what you've seen and know about this team defensively, and that's solely what you're basing it on is defense, right?
Yeah, the offense hasn't been exactly what I had hoped for, but I still think it's all there. It's not. I don't think they performed to their peak. And take the Cincinnati game as a perfect case in point. They could have done better. And it seems like we've said that over the past 3 or 4 years about this offense. We rarely see it click on all cylinders. But having said that, it's been pretty good.
All right, let's take a break, and then we'll run through offense and defensive players real quick and give a bye-week evaluation of each, being as how we're on the have a little bit extra time on this bye week. So a little break here for one of our sponsors.
All right, so which side of the ball you want to give a start on? You want to start on the offense?
Yeah, let's start on offense, and let's start on offensive line and go left to right. Alejandro Villanueva, to me, playing great.
Yeah, I think he's been solid. He, certainly I was a little bit down on him the first half of the first part of the season, but been better. And I think we saw an offensive line performance. I don't want to quite say for the ages last week against the Bengals, but it's if you get that kind of offensive line play that we saw from the Bengals, if you've got that across the season, you put all 5 guys in the Pro Bowl. I mean, they were great against Cincinnati. So yeah, I think you're probably a little higher on them than me, but I'm good.
Ramon Foster, I think the thing that stuck out the most about Ramon Foster on a couple of those pin and pull plays that they ran against the Bengals, his ability to perform one of those reach blocks on one of them, I think may have been on Geno Atkins, and the other one may have been one of them I know for sure was on young pup Andrew Billings there
on the backside. Yeah, just tying guys up, just sealing them off. It was really good.
Right, the ability to get across the face, and close that off was really quite impressive. So that alone puts Ramon Foster in the gold star category. Pouncey,
I think the interesting question with Ramon Foster is he going to be your starting left guard next year?
Yeah, I don't. If he is, it's going to be on a very, very cheap contract.
He's on a cheap contract now. I mean, he's just going to keep, and he might be the kind of guy who is willing to roll at $3 million a year, and just play until they tell him he can't. I would be. He is a guy who I don't think is, he's already shown once that he's not necessarily looking to leave. And they may have his backup on the roster, no doubt, and B.J. Finney could adequately fill that role. So it'll be an interesting thing to see if they keep him around. He's obviously a very well liked guy in the locker room. Ben loves the guy. That's good. I've thought in the past that Ramon was, done. I'm not willing to say that he's definitely not going to be the starting left guard next year. He might not be, but I think it's open for discussion.
Yeah. He's going to have to continue to stay healthy the rest of this year. The big knock on him heading into this year is he's usually good for 1 or 2 games at least, sitting out with an injury. So he looks a little large. He's not the most athletic looking specimen, but he'll still impress you, his ability to pull and stuff like the reach block, a couple of reach blocks that we saw. I mean, those are things that you really like to see your guards be able to do. So, yeah, nothing wrong there. Pouncey, look, that guy out in space,
he's the opposite. He is an athlete. He is the epitome of. He is as athletic as they come on the offensive line.
Him and Kelsey from the Eagles are at least 2 guys in this league. They're so fun to look. To watch on tape, to see out in space there. So, he does give on occasion some deep, penetration there up the middle, but nothing to be concerned about there. David DeCastro, there's one play with what's his name, the linebacker Ray, on one of those pin and pulls. It looks like that guy owed him some money. It really, I want my money. And he wrote him, right out to play Vincent Ray there. Another great pulling guy. I think another thing that you'll see, and Alex, I was good to point this out on some of those, pin and pull plays.
Yeah, it was good. Didn't see the video on SteelersDepot.com. Check it out. About 5 minutes. Alex did a nice job on breaking those plays down.
Yeah, it's sort of what they call the log block, when you pull and the guy's not, a lot of times you'd have a tendency to get that guy on the edge if he's there to continue to push him out on the edge. Well, if that guy comes inside, the ability to turn him to basically pin and turn him back inside, it's called a logging block. And DeCastro does a great job on one of those as well too. His recognition on pulls is really, really great there. And really Marcus Gilbert, what they're asking him to do, especially on some of these pin and pull plays to block down inside, pass protection has been okay. So I think left to right, I think we both agree. It's hard to argue, and I think I said this maybe on a radio show or either on our podcast the other day. Name me a better starting offensive line in the league right now.
Yeah, that's always one of the tough things because we know the Steelers' offensive line better by far than we know the others. There are definitely some good offensive lines, and let's be clear, there were a couple games this year where the Steelers' O-line wasn't great. But the last two performances have been exceptionally good. And coming off that, you got to, it goes back to, Mike Munchak, how much has he mattered in the development of this O-line since he took over? He's been clearly he was a great hire. He was an easy hire. He is a unassuming, very quiet, great teacher and position coach. I mean, we could have the debate of, is there a better, more qualified position coach in the game? Probably not. Munchak's obviously been a head coach in the league, and since he's been there, the Steelers have stayed healthy, and the offensive line's been a position of strength. And we can talk. We can debate forever Le'Veon Bell and James Conner, but running behind that line certainly is a benefit for both of those guys.
Okay, tight ends. Jesse,
the biggest positive surprise, I think, but mostly because Vance has stayed healthy. But all these guys have done the job.
Yeah, we kind of put the disclaimer on that most of the offseason. I was super high on him heading into the offseason, and then we get to training camp, and he misses all that time, and then we give him the nickname, if he can only stay healthy, McDonald. And, look, I mean, he is living up to what we would hope he would be right now. So, you knock on wood right now and hope he can continue doing so. I mean, even in the run block, I mean, across the board with this guy, with what he gives you offensively as a pass weapon, what he gives you as a pass blocker, what he gives you as a run blocker. I mean, this guy is the real deal for you right now. And if indeed he stays healthy, going to continue to be a huge or a big part in this offense. Now, Jesse James, a surprise there. I mean, if you look at his average yards per reception, you don't think of Jesse James as a guy that's going to get more than, average more than 10 yards or so per reception for you, and he has so far this season. Now, a lot of these have been kind of, I don't know if you want to call them, kind of fire drills, if you will, but they are what they are. And look, the big knock on Jesse James is always going to be his blocking, his run blocking, and even that, in my opinion, has been maybe a smidge better than what it's been in the past. So, and then you throw in the little that Xavier Grimble's been asked to do so far, and once again, his run blocking is his downfall with him more than anything. The tight end position as a whole combined, I don't think you could ask for anything more right now.
No, it's been very good. We got some little Xavier Grimble production in the last game. You watched a couple of those pin and pulls. Grimble's in there. He can block as well. Guy's probably never going to develop into what maybe he could have. Maybe if he had stayed another year at USC, but as a third tight end, he's proven to be more than capable. And yeah, I think you have a clear one. You have a clear one in Vance McDonald, and Jesse James is a very solid backup. So yeah, that group has, I would say, overperformed, and with this kind of slow start of Antonio Brown and the kind of really the non-existence of James Washington, they have been a favorite target of Ben Roethlisberger.
It's about 6 years too late, but we finally getting a lot of nice ability to do different things with two tight ends on the field, right? I mean, I've been going back to Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. I mean, how long have I been talking about? It sure would be nice to have a move tight end, and we finally have it now. Like I said,
but will tight end be a position of need in the draft next year?
Man, that's a great question. I mean, is Jesse going to be a priority for you to re-sign? And I think the answer to that, unfortunately, I think you try to get Jesse back.
I think if you offer Jesse James, 3 years and what's the right number? $7.5, $8 million. He jumps on that, doesn't he?
I don't know. I mean, I'll have to look at the market and all like that. I mean, he is what he is. I mean, he's not going to be
he's not going to be a number one tight end for anybody. He's not going to be. I can't imagine somebody paying him $12 million over 4 years or over 3 years for sure. I think if you offer him $7-8 million for 3 years, he's a happy camper. But same. I kind of look at him and Ramon Foster in the same light, right? a useful player. If you get him at $2 to $3 million, that's money well spent.
I think you look at and look, it's going to make if Vance has to continue to stay healthy. If he doesn't, then that becomes, a super big red flag. You just can't go into every year thinking, man, if only this guy can stay healthy, that kind of thing. If he can, and if you're confident ahead of the draft that you can re-sign Jesse James, then I think you move forward with that, and then you look at your weakest, which is Xavier Grimble, and then you match that up to the ground. I guess what I'm getting at is it doesn't become a definitely not a top 2 position of need there. Maybe at any point after round 3 and on, which you can get you some pretty decent tight ends, George Kittle, round 3 or later kind of stuff, and I haven't obviously looked at this year's or the incoming class this year at tight end. So I think it's a question that we don't have the answer to right now, to be quite honest with you. I think a lot of it depends on what happens the rest of the season this year with McDonald and his health, and whether or not they view Jesse James as kind of a pre free agency priority. All right, running back. We don't. Let's be honest. We don't know what Jalen Samuels is right now. I got a good idea what I think he is based on his college tape, but we're not. If things go well, we're not going to see hardly anything out of Jalen Samuels the rest of this year. We have seen quite a bit out of James Conner, though, as we talked about, and boy, it sure is encouraging. I tweeted nobody caught it, I don't think, but last night, because of who's that little running back for Denver, wearing number 30. What is his name? You know the guy that I'm talking about.
I do. I can't think of his name either.
Drawing a blank. I'll pull it up here in a minute here. I tweeted the word fungible, and that's a big word for me, David. That's quite an accomplishment for me to use a word like fungible in my language. But I did that because it just seems like, you look around the league. We're able to watch all these games on a weekly basis, right? And it just seems like teams can kind of plug and play at that position, right?
It does. And look, Samuels, I wasn't sure he was going to make the 53-man roster, to be honest. And he's played some special teams. We haven't seen him, play, I think maybe in the offense, a kneel down or whatever it was. But, he's not going to be a big contributor this year. And he's going to have to, let's be honest. If Le'Veon Bell comes back, maybe he's the guy who has to go through waivers. Well, I doubt Ridley's not going anywhere. And obviously James Conner's the guy. So if and when Le'Veon Bell comes back, Jalen Samuels he's certainly high on the list of the guys whose roster spot Le'Veon Bell would take.
Philip Lindsay is the Broncos back there. Look, I'm not trying to downplay Le'Veon Bell, because as I've said time and time again, I think if he would have kept his nose clean and contract wouldn't have been an issue. We could be talking about him being more than the next Eddie George, if you will, in this league. His receiving, his ability, what he gives you as a smart player out of the backfield helps a lot. And I think if you have a running back in this league that can help not only stay on the field and play 90% of the snaps, but be that all-around guy for you, the captain obvious thing to say is it makes your offense that much better. And I think that's what the Steelers have gotten out of Bell to date. Now, James Conner is certainly showing us a lot of the same things. Even pass protection has gotten better, and I don't know how much hyperbole it is from coming out of the mouth of Ben Roethlisberger and Randy Fichtner. Randy Fichtner this past week says, I'm not sure there's not anything that James Conner can't do. I don't. We need to see more James Conner, obviously, and we are going to for at least the next 2 or 3 games. Who knows? Maybe even much longer than that. But the proverbial arrow, or let's put it this way: before the season, we said, man, you just don't know what you have here in James Conner and Jalen Samuels. Well, we're not going to find out, hopefully, what Jalen Samuels is, but we sure as hell got a good idea of what James Conner is, and it certainly looks good.
Yeah, James Conner made himself a lot of money in 6 games. He's going to have a career in the league if he stays healthy. He's in good position.
And I still contend, David, that after the season's over, I think you try to go ahead and lock James Conner up for another whatever. Of course, we got plenty of games to talk about that, but as I'm sitting here right now, I think you might try to give him some of that Devontae Freeman money.
I think that's crazy, but okay. On record.
All right, but we're on record with that now. Just obviously, like we said, still got a lot of games left. Roosevelt Knicks. I mean, Roosevelt Knicks and Roosevelt Knicks. That guy pulls his wallet out and put it on a table. I guarantee you what it says. Okay, what else do we have offensively? I think that's it there. Do we want to do some defense?
We didn't do the wide receivers.
Oh, the wide, yeah, okay. Well, I mean, AB's AB. Well, it was foolish to be kind of concerned about his slow start, right?
Yeah. What would you give him though? Would you give him a B grade to this point in the season, or is it on Ben? That we didn't really talk about Ben either, but does AB get a B just because he hasn't been all world AB, or does he get an A because pretty good AB's all world for most people?
I mean, just because he draws a lot of attention too. I'm not willing to go out of the A grade just because Ben can't get into football in certain instances.
Yeah, I think he hadn't dropped passes. He's you might give him a B because of his moody bitchiness, but on the field he has been pretty solid. Juju's been solid, couple drops. We've seen some flaws in Juju's game, and nobody's perfect, and the kid's still 21 years old, or I don't know if he's turned 22 yet, but he's still a young guy, and he has been an exceptionally productive second-round pick, a year and a half into his career. So no qualms with Juju, just a couple hands issues, but so be it. Switcher's been a great find, no doubt. Justin Hunter, who knows what Justin Hunter is, and obviously James Washington's been a pretty, nobody's writing him off, nobody's calling him a bust, but his production has been disappointing to this point in the season, I think.
I would like to see him get a couple of deep balls in his hands. I would feel a lot. How would you feel if he had maybe 3 more catches and 70 more yards and a deep touchdown per se? How much would your perception of that? Where would he have to be right now for us to be nodding our heads?
15 catches for 200 yards, something like that. I mean, what's he got? 5 for well, I don't even know what he's got. 40 something
yards.
He's
only been targeted 13 times?
I'd like to see him targeted 3 or 4 times a game and making 2 or 3 catches a game. So, until we see that, it's hard to judge him, and it's hard to know if it's just he doesn't know the offense, or Ben doesn't trust him, or he's just not getting open, or he's just not on the field enough. So, we don't really have any answers. I mean, we don't have enough to evaluate, just other than the fact that he's running some routes and he's not getting the ball much.
Is it fair just to give him an incomplete instead of grading him at all?
Well, I think you could give him an incomplete, but you have to say his production's been disappointing. I mean, he doesn't have to be Juju-like numbers. Nobody expecting that's unrealistic for anybody, even a first top of the draft first round pick. I mean, who's not going to put up Juju numbers is Calvin Ridley in Atlanta. I mean, he's got a lot of touchdowns, but he's not going to put up Juju's numbers in receptions and yards on the season. So, yeah, I just incomplete to lack of production. Yeah.
I wrote this in my article or in my post the other day there about him. He's not going to get a lot of targets moving forward. He's probably going to get 2 to 3 targets a game. There might be a game mixed in there where he gets 5 or 6 probably, and I'm talking let's say the next 6 regular season games here. Okay, well, let's put a projection out there for him. What or a target for him? What would you like to see, let's say, in the Steelers' next 5 games? What kind of stat line would you like to see out of him?
3 catches a game at 40 yards a game. So 15 and 200.
So 15. So basically, the amount of catches he has right now is 5 for 45. Let's see, 3. I think 3 might be a little strong in average game. What if you went 2 what's 2.5 times 5?
12 and a half.
All right, let's go 12 catches, and I'd like to see like a 13 or let's say a 14-yard average. So what's 12 times 14?
128 was a 14. 12
no, that's
times
140 and
40, right? 40 and 28. So 168.
All right, so let's say 180. Let's say 12 for 180 and...
That's not too different than 15 and 200, right?
All right.
We're in the same ballpark.
Don't flap your math skills at me.
I got the first one wrong, but Miss Multiply.
Don't flaunt your superior math skills at my uneducated, mocking me. I'll have you know I'll have you know that I took 2 classes at Pensacola Junior College.
Fantastic. You got a diploma for that?
Yeah, no.
How many catches will DHB and Justin Hunter have the rest of the season combined?
Oh Lord, 4?
Over under 3. I was going to say over under 3 or 3 or 4.
What's that back to school where Rodney Dangerfield has that surprise that Sam Kinison puts him through that big math question or whatnot or question, he goes 4 with the surprised look on his Melvin. What was that guy's name? Something P. Mellon or something like that. But anyway, 4. That
4.
would be my guess. 4.
All right. And Ben, what do you give Ben? A B? You know, Ben's numbers are career highs in numbers, but yeah, I'd give him a B. I think he was he's been good the past. He was, he hadn't put a whole game together until maybe the Bengals game. He was maybe his best game. He's had great halves and he had some horrible halves. So I'd give him a B to this point probably.
I'd give him a B minus. He's missing throws. He's missed
down. Missed a lot of throws. Yeah. Coming off the last game, maybe I'm over. Yeah, I think B minus is fair. Yeah.
Now, I guarantee if he start hitting a couple of these down the field throws, you want to talk about really opening some things up here.
213 on passes over 30 yards on the season. I think somebody put out there yesterday 7% of historically 7% of his passes have been deep balls on that metric, and he's at 4% this year. So not taking as many shots. Are you playing Mega Millions? It's $970 million tonight.
No, I haven't been.
Are you gonna?
I guess I have to leave the house for that, don't I?
I'll tell you what. If one of us wins, we won't charge at all for the podcast forever.
I'll open up. I'll open up Steelers Depot for life.
for ad free for everybody.
Yeah, ad free for everybody. People can make their own posts too. I'll let people post whatever the heck they want.
But my bookie will still be going. We'll still be taking money from my bookie because you can get to mybookie.ag and still get your deposit matched if you use the promo code terrible, as in terrible podcast. And if you got on the free Thursday nighter again last night with the Broncos, then you're rolling in it coming into the weekend. You can do all sorts of things. We've talked about it. Bet a little. You want to play a 3-team parlay, turn 100 into 600, turn a 72-team parlay into 970 million on the Mega Millions. You can do that as well.
What's it going to take for you to start turning your pick in on Thursday night? Do you know how long David Todd?
on either making a pick on Wednesday or like today, we'll pick next Thursday's game now.
I mean, for God's sake, and then you want me to give you credit. Well, I would have went.
I'll take a no play. I did not post last night. Do not give me credit for a win or a loss, even though, again, it was an obvious win, as they all are in hindsight.
Yeah, no, I'm giving you the L. I'm giving you enough wins that I'm
L for a not play.
I'm giving you an L for not playing.
By the way, yesterday was the sports equinox. All four sporting events were in play last night. The NFL, Major League Baseball playoffs, hockey. The Pens get a 3-0 shutout in Toronto. Nice win for them. And a little NBA. So it was a prime time to be checking things out. So look, my bookie is the one bet you'll be happy with all year. We've recommended these guys. They've been in business for years. Great online reviews. Mobile site's easy to use. You got fantasy. You got everything, and they will match your deposit up to $1,000 if you haven't been involved. So check it out. Put the promo code Terrible in. You play, you win, you get paid. And let's get you paid as we make our pick.
They take Bitcoin too. You're big into that Bitcoin, aren't you?
I'm big into watching Bitcoin. I'm not big into actively involved in Bitcoin.
You do a lot with that kind of not real money, right?
Yeah, I tell people that I have a lot of Bitcoin.
Okay, let's get started here. Boy, David, it is a great day to be alive, and like I said earlier in the week, I hope I'm alive on Sunday because with the Steelers off, I get to sit around. You know what time football comes on starting Sunday morning here in Vegas?
Is it 6 a.m. this week?
6:30 because of the first game over in London with the Tennessee Titans playing David Todd's Los Angeles Chargers, and the Chargers are.
And man, apparently nobody in Los Angeles wants to support the Chargers. You can do it. Get your Charger gear. Get your Phillip Rivers jersey.
Chargers 7-point favorites in this one.
Give me the Keenan Allens and the Lightning Bolts -7.
I'm not sure what to make out of Tennessee. Boy, that you give up 11 sacks. And Bosa's not back yet for the Chargers, or is he?
No, he hasn't been back.
Yeah, he's not supposed to be back either. It'd be something to have Ingram and Bosa being able to get after Mariota. You know what? Because of the travel being involved in this and all, I think the Chargers win this. But give me the Titans plus the 7 points here, David.
Fair enough. The Bears coming off a rough loss in Miami, in a game that either team could have won in regulation, and probably the Bears really kicking themselves for not winning this game. Trubisky, I don't know what to make of him. He's unclear. Where the Bears, the Bears defense got shredded by Brock Osweiler, so you got to think, the Patriots. I guess our boy from the Raiders, for the kid from Buffalo, the stud linebacker was playing with a banged up ankle.
Oh, Mac.
Khalil Mack was playing with a sprained ankle. I'm going to take the Patriots on the road -3.5.
Yeah, I don't see. Something stinks here. I don't understand it. Give me the Patriots late at 3.5.
Mike Smith gets the axe in Tampa. The defensive coordinator gets canned this week as Tampa gives up another 1,000,000 points. It's not probably wasn't Mike Smith, but certainly their scheme and their secondary looks awful. Cleveland going down there has lost 23 consecutive road games. The record is 24. Let's get the Browns on the road. Let's get that one out of the way so they don't do it in Pittsburgh the following week. So give me the Browns +3.5 and an outright win.
Yeah, their defense is going to have to do it in this one. I'm not sure they can. Their offensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt for Cleveland right now, Baker Mayfield and all 4.47. I mean, aren't they beaten up at wide receiver big time as well too? And look, I said last week they probably get a little bit of humbling there. They did. I think they get a little bit more on the road this weekend as well too. Give me the Buccaneers late at 3.5, David.
All right, Lions -3 at Miami. Wow, that's an interesting line. They not expecting Tannehill to play again, huh? That's a very interesting line. Why are the Lions favored on the road at Miami? Give me the Dolphins +3 at home.
Give me the Lions on the road late at 3.
All right, Philadelphia -5, hosting the Panthers. Man, the Panthers are the hardest team to figure out, I think, over the past 2 years, week in and week out, what they're going to do. I think Eagles are finally getting it together. Close game, but not quite close enough. Eagles by 6, so I'll lay the 5.
I'm going to go on the other side. I think the Panthers can upset them. And if not, I think they can keep this within a Graham Gano field goal. So I'm going to Gano with the Panthers plus 5.
I like it. Captain Andrew Luck will marshal his forces in Indianapolis this week. They're laying 7.5 to the gentleman from Buffalo, Josh Allen. It's going to be Derek Anderson getting a nod for the Buffalo Bills, plus 7.5. Give me Derek Anderson in the clipboard, plus 7.5.
I'll take Captain Luck minus a 7.5 at home.
Chiefs minus 7 against the Bills. Chiefs by 20. Blowing them out. Put up a big number at home. 40 points for the Chiefs.
You know that animated GIF that we see of that guy at the wrestling event really bouncing up and down, throwing that popcorn in his mouth as fast as he can all over the place? That's going to be me watching this game, rooting for the Chiefs in this one. I really would like to see Mahomes just thoroughly destroy that. And look, the Bengals are beat up defensively as well too. I want to see Kansas City do what they did to Pittsburgh in this game. So give me Kansas City minus 7 in this. Yeah,
game. They're out of order here. That's the Sunday night game as well, so everybody's going to get a chance to check out that one. Jets plus 4 at home against the Vikings. Jets may be the dark horse in the AFC to just contend for a playoff spot. So give me the Vikings minus the 4. See if they can kind of make life a little better for the Steelers. If you're starting a scoreboard watch, this is one where you're rooting for the team from the NFC.
I'll go with you there. Look, Sam's going to be fine, but they're going to have some bumps in the road, and I think this might be one of them. Give me the Vikings minus 4 on the road.
Important divisional game. We got three teams at 3-3. The Jags host the Texans plus 5. Man, Deshaun Watson was all that and more last year until he got hurt, and we have not heard his name mentioned with what Mahomes is doing and some other teams are doing in the Texans' slow start. Deshaun Watson has not been talked about at all. Let's see if he can get off the schneid. Give me the Texans plus 5.
Yeah, and boy, what do we think about the Jaguars right now at this point? I think they get I think they get back on track at home. If the Jaguars lose this, I mean, we had that talk the other day about who's going to come out of that South Division. I mean, who really is? I mean, Jaguars need to take control of that starting on Sunday, and I think they will. I'm going to say they cover that 5 at home against the Texans.
Big one at 4:05. Chance to watch. Well, Saints get Drew Brees and all the trimmings coming up to Baltimore. Gosh, yeah, give me the Saints. This should be a fun one to watch as well. The Saints score 27 points. They put up 27 against a good Ravens defense.
Yeah, this is look. We'll find out how good that Ravens defense is, right? I mean, we'll know whether or not they're for real. I think after this game. I'm going to stay away from this one with the man just because I think my heart's going to be too much in it. But for you and I, give me the Saints plus the 2 on the road.
I'm going to go against the wisdom here. I think people saw the Cowboys put it on the Jags, and I think the world's going to be on the Cowboys plus 1.5 against the Redskins. Give me the Redskins at home minus 1.5.
Yeah, I'm not a believer in Dallas right now either. So give me the Redskins minus the 1.5 at home against Dallas.
San Francisco 9.5 at home with the host of the Rams. I mean, CJ Beathard looked okay. The kid, speedster from the Bills, he was great last week.
Good win.
Good win. 9.5's a lot, but I like the Rams too much. I think they put up 35 again, and that's going to just sneak them over. These two teams have played some very entertaining games on high-profile moments. This will be a 4:25 start. I'll reluctantly take the Rams minus 9.5.
Yeah, and look, the Rams defense is not the Packers defense, right? So let's get that clear there. I think the 49ers come back to earth this week. Thanks for the entertainment last week, but I think the Rams cover this. So lay the 9.5.
Absolute dog of a Monday night game. Make other plans. Atlanta hosting the Giants. You get to watch Saquon Barkley. I guess there's that against a bad defense. I don't think that, nobody's getting fired, and Eli, maybe Eli finally loses his job if they get smoked in this one, but I don't expect to see anything different than what we've seen. Falcons put up a lot of points at home, probably give up some as well. 31-20 Falcons. I'll take the Falcons -5.
I'll take that the Giants can at least hang with it. I don't think the Giants win this one, and Lord knows the Falcons can't afford to lose this one, NFC game. So give me the Falcons to win, but I'll take the Giants. I'll take Eli and the Giants plus those 5 points on the road.
Arizona Cardinals are 50,000 to 1 at mybookie.ag to win the Super Bowl. If you want to get your bet in.
And not that high. Yeah, they are too, I guess. Yeah, +5. Yeah, they are. The Steelers are
1,800.
Yeah, so that's 18 to 1, right?
Yeah, the Eagles in there at 16 to 1. So if you want to get on the Steelers now, that's probably decent value at 18 to 1.
The Titans have lower odds, or no, they're 80 to 1. Sorry, I need my glasses here. Eagles at 16 to 1. Who are Saints obviously have some good odds. Patriots obviously have some good odds. But yeah, a lot of good odds. Now's the time, probably between 18 and 20 to 1, probably going to be the best that you would get on the Steelers.
Yeah, you probably should have got them last week. They were probably 25 to 1. Now they're a little bit cheaper, a little bit more expensive. But 18 to 1 is probably decent value on the Steelers.
All right, did we miss anything, Dave? Vontaze Burfict, still no word from the league on that.
Yeah, which means maybe there's going to be no word. That's somewhat shocking.
I am a bit surprised. Well, I'm a bit surprised on this. I thought they would have done something on him. I think they missed the boat on here. No explanation, no nothing. Not that they have to give one with him on that. But all right, you and I will review the defensive players individually. Let's say on Monday, and we'll talk about what all had happened in Week 7 of the NFL on Monday as well, too. People can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow David Todd on Twitter at David M. Todd. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast at gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the show, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit donate button, upper right navigation bar there. If you want an ad-free version of a Steelers Depot, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit ad-free for $25 for a calendar year. You can have an ad-free version of the site. And some good football. I'm going to sit around the house all day in my underwear in Mom's basement.
As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave.